Hi guys, welcome back to the home at Homestead. Today we'll be doing a water bath canning project and we'll be making a savory and delicious balsamic onion jam. So this jam would be great on top of hamburgers or sandwiches, perhaps a nice roasted vegetable or grilled vegetable panini or sandwich on a crusty ciabatta bread with some of this drizzled over the top. It's very flavorful and a nice savory jam that you can add to your pantry shelf. My inspiration for this recipe today is from the all-new Ball Book of Canning and Preserving. And I made just a few adjustments on the flavorings for this recipe. If you wanted to follow it to the letter, you can find it in that canning cookbook. So for a single batch of this recipe, it calls for 2 pounds of onions, which would be about 3 nice size Vidalia onions, which is the type of onion that I'll be using today. I'm going to be doubling the recipe, and so a single recipe is supposed to produce approximately 5 half-pint jars of the jam. So I'm hoping I'll be able to make about 10 jars of this savory jam to have available for us throughout the year. So follow along and see what flavor combinations I go with for preparing this balsamic onion jam. So first what we want to do is we'll need to prepare the onions. The recipe says to dice it. I'm going to be thinly slicing to put on top of the hamburgers or sandwiches and things like that. If you want to do a diced onion, you can do that. You can use a mandolin or a food processor to help with the process, but I feel like just kind of hand chopping today. So that's what we're going to do today. Alright, so doubling this recipe, I went with 4 pounds of the onions and it ended up making about 4 quarts of the sliced prepped onions. For the peels and the scraps of onions, I will be saving these. I'll put these in a large Ziploc bag and put them in the freezer for a future project that we'll be doing together. Alright, so we have the prepared onions in here. Again, we have about 4 quarts of sliced Vidalia onions. And what I like to do whenever I'm cooking with onions is I like to caramelize them a little bit. And to do that, I add a little salt with the onion, and that helps to remove some of the liquid from the onion as it cooks and give it a little more of a caramelized flavor to it. So I'm doubling the recipe again. So we'll do 3 teaspoons of canning salt. We'll stir this in and we'll let this cook. Once I get these cooked down a little bit more and have a little more color to them like I prefer, then we'll add the other ingredients to make this balsamic onion jam. Okay, so these onions have been cooking for about 20 minutes. And you can see how much the volume has gone down. And the salt has drawn out a lot of that fluid and it's cooking and evaporating away. So we'll let these cook a little bit longer so we can get a little color on them to caramelize. Then we'll move on to the next phase. All right, so we've cooked these down another 20 minutes, so that's 40 minutes total of cooking down these onions. And they are translucent and they're starting to get a little bit of color, so now we can go on to the next step, which is adding some more of the ingredients. So we will add 1 cup of balsamic vinegar. And again, I am doubling the recipe. 1 cup of maple syrup. We'll mix this together. And the original recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of white pepper. I do not have white pepper on hand. And white pepper is more mild in flavor than black pepper. So I'll start with 1 teaspoon of ground black pepper today. If I need to add more later, I will. So we'll mix this all together, and the recipe says to cook until the onions are translucent. Well, we've already done that step of the process. So now we can add the remaining ingredients. Optionally, you can add 1 bay leaf at this point. I will not be doing that. We will add 4 cups of apple juice and 6 tablespoons of low or no sugar pectin. So this is the pectin that I will be using today. It's the Ball low or no sugar pectin. 5 and 6. So now what we're going to do is bring this mixture up to a boil. It'll be a boil that we cannot stir down. So we'll let this come up to a nice rolling boil. So the balsamic onion jam mixture has come to a rolling boil. And that has taken about another 20 minutes to reach this point. Now we'll add the final ingredient, which is 1 cup of sugar. So we'll mix this in to dissolve the sugar. We'll bring this back up to a boil and we'll let it boil for about 1 minute. All right, this has been boiling for 1 minute, so let's get this into the jars. I tasted this and the 1 teaspoon of the ground black pepper was plenty. So if you are substituting black pepper for the white pepper, if you're doing a single recipe, I would do a ½ teaspoon of black pepper. If you're doing a double recipe like I'm doing today, then I would suggest 1 teaspoon of ground black pepper. So now let's get this balsamic onion jam into the jars. I have ½ pint jars here, and we're going to fill them to a 1/4 inch headspace. And this jam is not terribly thick at this point. You have to remember that it still has to process and cool, and then it will thicken for you. I would say this is more of the consistency of like a syrup. It's definitely not as watery as when we started off, but it's not like, say, a fruit jam or preserve or something like that. It's not as thick as that right now. Put this last remaining jam here into a container, and I'll put this in the refrigerator. So this is a rather sticky project, so I'm going to take a paper towel and I'll wipe the rims and the side threads to try to get any drippings here. That'll help us achieve a nice tight seal with the lid. I'm using wide mouth jars today. I like to use that for certain sauces and dips and things like this. As I said earlier, this will be really nice on sandwiches or hamburgers as a nice robust flavor with the balsamic vinegar and some sweetness with the apple juice and sugar. All right, so we'll place the lid on, followed by the ring, and just finger tight. The ring is there to simply hold the lid in place while it's processing. The water bath canner is all ready to go. So once we get these lids and rings on, we'll place them in the water bath canner, and the minimum processing time is 15 minutes. Let's head over to the water bath canner. All right, so over at the water bath canner, let me remove the lid. We'll double check the temperature. Good. We'll add the jars. I was able to get 10 half-pint jars from this double batch of the recipe. I put a canning rack on the bottom of my water bath canner so I can place the jars directly on there. And just make sure that the water covers the jars by at least 1 inch. I'm able to fit 8 in here very nicely, so I'll do these and I'll process the last 2 afterwards. So we'll set the timer for 15 minutes. That's minimum processing time. That all depends on your altitude. As I mentioned in numerous canning videos, whenever you're canning, you need to take into consideration your altitude and feet of where you live. So for water bath canning or boiling water method here on this chart, you would increase the processing time by the minutes on the right if necessary. So that's just something to be mindful of whenever you're canning. So we'll let these process for 15 minutes. I'll put the remaining jars in and process them for 15 minutes. Then we'll check out the final product together. Well, here you have it. We have 10 half-pint wide mouth jars of the Balsamic Onion Jam. So this is a really robust onion jam with the flavors of the balsamic vinegar and black pepper. This would be really nice on sandwiches or hamburgers, perhaps with a roasted or grilled vegetable panini or ciabatta sandwich, maybe even a chicken wrap. A lot of different options that you can use this tasty and savory onion jam on. So hopefully you'll be inspired to try this out so you can add this to your pantry and add it to recipes or meals for yourself. If you want to check out other videos I have on condiments and things you can add to hamburgers and sandwiches and things like that, I have a water bath canning video on how to make bell pepper relish as well as ketchup 2 ways. I also break down step-by-step how to process your tomatoes for making tomato sauce as a base for various different recipes that you can can or cook. And I also have a video on some different flavored barbecue sauces. So you can check those out if you're interested in that sort of thing and want to try some new recipes in your kitchen. Well, I hope you're having a great day and that you had fun cooking with me in the kitchen today. Well, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. See you next time. Take care.